Hi everyone, Rael from Nozzle here. So we come to the possibly most in-depth and arguably complicated tab of what we do, and this is a analysis of customer lifetime value, also called profit per customer, and the idea of customer acquisition cost. So I covered customer acquisition cost in a previous video, but we're going to go into it in a little more depth and contextualize it a little bit, and how do you interpret the numbers and what are the trends, etc. So the first thing to say is, again, you can view things around a brand level, an individual ASIN level, or category level. And I would suggest when looking at a chart like this, you really want to be doing it as granular as possible. Now, I totally get, again, if you have loads of ASINs, it's not possible to do every single ASIN on what the lifetime value is and what is your break-even ACoS for an individual ASIN. So I would suggest at least doing it on a category level if you have a lot of ASINs. But if you do have, let's say, a reliance on, let's say, 2-3 ASINs that are 50% of all your revenue or all your profits, then I would actually break out those hero ASINs and do it on an individual level there, because it really is worth it to do it. So I'm just going to do an account level for this demo. The default time period, again, is 6 months. You can change all of this, and I'll show you what that looks like in the future. So the first table is the monthly averages of lifetime value and break-even ACoS and how they trend over time. So what we're saying here is, at a account level, if I've chosen this time period, the last 6 months, I'm making a profit, not sales, I'm making a profit of $14.72 on the first sale. So just a reminder, when you're on board with us, you're asked to input your margin data, your cost of goods sold, your COGS data, and Amazon fees, so we can really get this as close as possible to an actual profit number. So when we talk about profit per customer here, this is pretty accurate. So you're making a profit of $14.72 on that first purchase. And if you had to wait 3 months, that actually grows to $18.79, because, of course, some of those people are buying again within 3 months. And so how this number grows, so this is going from 1472 to 1879, that jump is a pretty significant jump, and one of the numbers that we pay very, very close attention to. If you're jumping 15-20% or north of that within 3 months, that is a very, very healthy sign. That means that a lot of your customers are two things. It means that a lot of customers are buying again within 3 months, right? So that purchase cadence, that 90-day purchase cadence, and of course the actual number of people, how many of them are doing it? Is it 5%? Is it 30%, right? So those are the two variables that will drive these numbers. And of course your margins are important there as well, but the growth and the jump between that and the first purchase in 3 months is really important. We also have correspondingly the break-even ACoS. So when you think about break-even ACoS to begin with, this is the maximum ACoS I can afford when setting up a PPC campaign in order to break even on that first purchase. So in this example, you can start off at 48% if you want to break even on that first purchase. But actually, if you had to wait just 3 months, that number jumps up to 65%. And that's a huge jump. If you've got all that extra room there, what is that, sort of 17%? If you've got all that extra room, you've got 65% to break even instead of just 48, that allows you to do many more things, right? That allows you to invest in higher cost per click terms. You can go after higher category terms. You can probably invest in higher up the funnel terms. It probably justifies things like sponsored brand video for some of the larger brands, maybe even the DSP. But it just gives you a lot more flexibility in an environment of rising CPCs to, I guess, in a way, outspend your competitors. The reason why there aren't any numbers sort of from that point on, is just because I've selected 6 months. So if I want to go all the way back as long as possible, so let's say 24 months, I'm just going to wait for this to load. These numbers will update as well, right? So now you can see these numbers updating, and this big table at the bottom, which I'll come to in a bit, has updated as well. So you can see the progression over 2 years. You can actually see the first purchase number has changed itself, and all of these numbers have changed because it's now sampling from 2 years, not just the last 6 months. And so you can see that progression up over time. We then come to the what we call cohort analysis. And cohort is just simply a way of what we do with it is dividing up your customer base according to when somebody first bought from you. So let's say Rael goes and buys for the very first time from this brand in November 21. I get put into this particular cohort. I'm part of the 8,375 new to brand customers. And whenever I buy again, whether it's 3 months, 6 months down the line, whatever I do is always going to be attributable to the November 21 cohort. It's always going to make these numbers tick up over time. And only these numbers, only the November 21 cohort. And so every single one of your customers is going to get placed into only one cohort. And what that allows you to do is to compare cohorts over time and compare trends over time. And so you can start saying things like asking questions like, well, are my earlier customers more or less valuable than my newer customers at the same point in time? So let's say after 6 months, you can see that after 6 months, let's say the early sort of adopters or the early cohorts are roughly worth, let's call it, I don't know, about $14.5, $15. But you can see the newer customers after 6 months are worth a whole lot more, right? They're after 6 months, they're actually worth closer to $20. And that's obviously a really good sign. The reasons for that could be numerous. I mean, it could be because you've just raised prices or your margins have improved or they're buying more frequently, but it's clearly a trend that's going in the right direction, which is really good. The reason why we don't have data for any cohort after 6 months after April is simply because there just hasn't been 6 months since April when I'm recording this video. There hasn't been 6 months yet for them to do that. And so next month when I check in, that number is going to be populated. And the same thing going back all the way, right? So if you go all the way through to the August 22 cohort, then you can see that they've only had basically 1 month to buy again. So what this allows you to do is to just track the progress of individual cohorts. And one of the main use cases here, not just is to look backwards and see what's happened in the past in historical trends, but actually to measure the impact of any changes you want to make in the future. So for instance, I've got data going all the way up to August 22. I want to, for instance, increase my customer retention rate. And I'm going to do some new things. I'm going to perhaps start a remarketing campaign. Well, how do I measure the impact on whether that marketing campaign has actually worked? I can track, and I'm running this marketing campaign, let's say for the whole of September. I want to track what happens to that September cohort. So what happens to the retention rate of that cohort? What happens to the lifetime value of that cohort, let's say after 3 months? And then I can compare it to all the historical cohorts to say, okay, the lifetime value's increased and the customer retention rate's increased. It just seems to match up with when I made those changes on the remarketing side, and therefore I think it has worked. So this is very different to A/B testing. They're both good. They're both used in different ways, but the cohort analysis is really measuring the impact of a change you can make over time. And because we're very interested in lifetime value and repeat purchases, it's very much in theme with measuring results over time. So just to go over a few of the other fields here. Firstly, right at the top, as I said, we're always measuring things on an actual profit level. So we want to take out all discounts. We want to take out your cost of goods sold, and we want to take out all the Amazon fees. So we really want to get to a per profit basis. However, you can actually change this to just do it on sales data, right? And so all those things are going to be zero rated around margins and Amazon fees. Less useful, I would say, than doing it on profit, of course. But again, when, for instance, people want to compare this to other channels, they're selling on Walmart, for instance, and they don't have the COGS data or the Walmart fees. You just want to compare like for like, and so doing it on sales could be useful there. The final tab is just the percentage of people in that cohort returning in a given month. So let me give you an example. The January 22 cohort, there were a record amount of 11,800 new to brand customers. And in month 6, right, which coincides with 6 months after their first purchase. So this is going to be in July 22 because they first bought in January. So in month 6, you can see that 5.92% of the 11,800 or 699 customers repeat bought in that particular month. So that's what the percentages mean there. A few other things to cover. So the R percentage is the repeat order rate percentage. So this is just saying let's take another month here. Let's take October 21. Of the 8,419 new to brand customers that first bought from us in October 21, 18.89% of them have bought at least twice. So that's just the repeat order rate 2 or more times for that particular cohort. And so it's also quite important to measure the trends in here. So you can see, for instance, if I go all the way back, it's mid to high 20s. That seems to be dropping a little bit, although there's a bit of an outlier month over here where it's shot up to 34%. But in general, the trend is sort of going down to, mid to low 20s. There might be a particular reason for that. You might be going after different types of customers. You might want to trade off. You might be happy to sacrifice a little drop in the repeat order rates in order to expand your market and to go after other customers. And then one really important thing to know is generally for the last 3 months, these numbers are going to be a lot lower than historical numbers. And the reason for that is the customers that have bought for the first time in the last 90 days, they really haven't had enough time to buy again, right? It's only been 90 days. They haven't had enough time to buy again in order to compare it to previous cohorts. So if you remember, let's look at purchase intervals. So how do I come up with 90 days? Well, I could actually change my mind based on this over here. So let's look at purchase intervals. Actually, I do change my mind here. So what we're saying here is of all the people that buy twice, 67% of them have done it after 60 days, and nearly 80%, 78% of them have done it after 90 days. So really what I want to be doing, I'll stick with 90, for instance. So I really want to disregard, when I go back to the cohort analysis, I really want to ignore or disregard the last 3 cohorts, simply because I want to make sure that I've given enough time for all those new customers to buy again before I start comparing them to historical cohorts. The last 2 columns I want to go through. One is just the ad spend. This is going to be the same number as you saw in the performance summary chart. So we're adding up sponsored ads. We're adding up sponsored brands, sponsored brand video, sponsored display, and sponsored products per ASIN per month. And we're putting the number there. When you first connect, as mentioned before, you typically are only going to see 1 or 2 months because Amazon only allows us to go back 60 days. But if you've been a customer for a long time, from that point onwards, clearly we're saving all the data. Then there's this idea of customer acquisition cost. And the idea here is how much you're paying in advertising to acquire a new customer. And so the math is pretty simple. It's simply the ad spend divided by the number of new to brand customers. And so in this case here, what you can see and how you start using the customer acquisition cost is to say things like, okay, in January, it cost me $13.25 to acquire a new customer. I know that I break even on I know that my profit on the first purchase is $11.79. And so I'm typically not going to be breaking even on that first purchase because I paid more to acquire a customer, i.e. $13.75, than the historical average, right? Than the $11.79. But I'm going to probably break even in month 2, if not month 3, because after 3 months, somebody's worth $15.69, and I've just paid $13.25. So it's going to take me a couple months to break even. And actually what we've done here is every cell that's highlighted in green is the break even month, right? So you can see that basically after 1 month, I've now broken even. Just a bit of a side note here, while we have a month 0, what month 0 means is, let's take this cohort, the January 22 cohort. I had 11,800 people buy in January, and month 0 means some of those people are actually buying again in January, right? And so in fact, 458 of the 11,800 bought again in January. And so, you're off to the races there, which is good. And in fact, that's sort of echoed a bit over here, where you can see in the first 7 days, or even over here, you can see nearly 20% of people are going to be buying again on average within sort of the first 15 days. So that's why we have what we call a sort of month zero there. So that's pretty much what I wanted to share with you today. If you have any questions, please reach out to me personally. I'm always happy to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly. Thanks very much. Bye.